welcome to News Round, a recap of stories that made headlines during the week. First off, let's take a look at the headlines. National Assembly receives President Buhari's letter declining assent to Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The President launches National Development Plan 2021 to 2025, designed to facilitate the nation's development in the area of science and technology. The day after multiple explosions rocked the nation's capital from rockets launched by suspected Boko Haram members, federal government says terrorists were unable to achieve their objectives. Plus, officials consider whether COVID rules should be tightened in England as other countries in Europe tighten travel restrictions. Our news round begins in the National Assembly, where the Senate President and Speaker of the House of Representatives have read the letter from the President Buhari to federal lawmakers declining assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Both leaders read their letters in their respective chambers during Tuesday's plenary sessions.
President Buhari's letter responding to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill is finally before federal lawmakers in both chambers of the National Assembly on Tuesday. The 30-day deadline for President Buhari to communicate to the National Assembly on his decision to either sign or decline assent on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill expired on Sunday, December the 19th. In the Senate, lawmakers converge in groups. They already knew the content of a letter. Senate President Ahmad Lawan gets down to business and reads the communication to his colleagues, disclosing President Buhari's decision refusing to sign the Electoral Act Amendment Bill into law and the reasons given.
The conduct of direct primaries across the 8,809 wards across the length and breadth of the country will lead to a significant spike in the cost of conducting primary elections by parties, as well as increase in the cost of monitoring such elections by INEC. In addition to increased costs identified above, conducting and monitoring primary elections across 8,809 wards will pose huge security challenges, as the security agencies will also be overstretched, and such large turnout without effective security coordination will also engender intimidation and disruptions, thereby raising credibility issues for the outcomes of such elections.
Done with reading the correspondence from the President, the Senate proceeds to other matters. But a federal legislator draws his colleagues back to President Buhari's letter.
Mr. President, it is my opinion that the Senate dissolve into a closed session and discuss on it so that we can take appropriate decision on it.
A closed-door session commences. More than 30 minutes later, proceedings are open to the public. Lawmakers are seen still holding intimate discussions in groups and writing on a piece of paper. Sources say these are signatures from legislators showing the intention to override President Buhari's veto on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. However, the Senate President makes no mention of what transpired during the executive session and adjourns plenary till the following day, going against the upper chamber's earlier plan of proceeding on its end-of-year holiday on Tuesday. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker also reads the letter from President Buhari declining assent to the Electoral Act Amendment Bill.
As it is now, that bill has not received presidential assent, and it falls to Parliament to decide the best way forward.
As plenary progresses, a member raises a matter of privilege, urging the Speaker to guide the House on how to respond to President Buhari's letter.
The word now in the street is that this is a do-nothing house. You read the President's correspondence. We need to have a direction.
The minority leader also raises a matter of privilege to immediately address the matter.
So, Mr. Speaker, I'm begging this House that we can suspend our rules and immediately look at that clause that talks about direct primaries.
The House of Representatives proceeds on its end-of-year holiday, and whatever response it intends to make as regards President Buhari's decision on the Electoral Act Amendment Bill will be clearer when it resumes in January 2022. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
And now the Senate did accomplish a big feat this week, which is the passage of the 2022 appropriation bill. The figures from the Senate is the same as those of the House of Representatives, which had passed its version a day before, embarking on Christmas and New Year recess. Do take a listen.
2021 be approved, say aye.
It's the final plenary session for the year in the Senate, and the upper chamber is in a hurry to pass the 2022 appropriation bill, in line with its promise to continue with the practice of a one-year budget cycle in the country.
2091.
It retains the majority of the estimates presented by President Buhari in the budget, but increases the benchmark price of crude from $57 to $62 per barrel.
The increase in oil benchmark from $57 per barrel to $62 per barrel to reflect the current market value in the international markets. Debt service, 3.9 trillion.
The upper chamber increases the budget deficit by 98 billion naira to include requests made by the executive for some projects not provided for in the budget and could not be covered by the increase in revenue.
The committee recommends that the additional revenues discovered should be provided to the following agencies that forwarded their requests for more funding for very critical projects: Works and Housing, Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for the 2023 general elections, Defense, and the National Population Commission, NPC, for the 2022 population census.
For the 2022 appropriation bill, we are expecting that the bill will be cleaned up between today and tomorrow, and we hope that by tomorrow, the bill will be sent to Mr. President for his assent.
The Senate also approves President Buhari's request for the development of 276.7 billion naira to fund expenditures in the 2021 budget. The development request is for the payment of contractors, public service wage adjustment for MDAs, funds for the Ministry of Education, Nigeria Air Force, Defense and FEMA. The Senate then adjourns to the 18th of January 2022. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
And while the National Assembly appeared to be the focus of attention, there was much happening elsewhere at the presidential villa, where President Muhammadu Buhari, ahead of the Federal Executive Council meeting, formally launched the National Development Plan 2021 to 2025.
In yet another move by the federal government to reinforce the nation's developmental purpose, a 2021-2025 National Development Plan, approved by the Federal Executive Council in November, is launched.
Thank you very much.
The presentation of this latest medium-term strategy, which succeeds the Economic Growth and Development Plan 2017 to 2020, is symbolic, according to the Finance Minister, to halt years of documented failure in some aspects of the nation's economy.
The plan seeks to invest massively in infrastructure, ensure macroeconomic stability, enhance the investment environment, improve on social indicators and living conditions, tackle climate change mitigation, adaptation and resilience strategies, amongst others.
Since 1960, Nigeria has adopted no less than 4 national development plans as a pathway to actual development that ended with diminished hopes.
Now we have a plan in place for 2021 that is further aimed principally at ensuring that the gains have been consolidated and Nigerians are being continuously included. This government, more than any other, have taken deliberate, active steps to include all economic groups and support them.
At a briefing, the Finance Ministry admits previous plans were lacking, but exploring this all-encompassing six-clustered plan is guaranteed to broaden the nation's economic gains.
This plan also has a financing plan to increase revenue to 15% of GDP. Currently, revenue to GDP is 7%.
It can be recalled that a Vision 2020 was previously launched to make Nigeria one of the biggest economies in the world, but that came with its loopholes that became major drawbacks. And the federal government insists this will be different, would not be vulnerable this time around. But this leaves Nigerians with a lot of expectations, particularly in the face of a morass of challenges facing the country. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And following the rocket attack launched in Maiduguri on Thursday, the federal government is expressing worry over the development. The attack occurred shortly before the scheduled visit of the president to the Borno state capital. But the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Alkali Baba, said the attack failed to achieve the objective of the insurgents owing to ongoing efforts by the military.
Few hours after the president returned from his trip to Maiduguri, he presides over an emergency National Security Council meeting at the State House. The Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and all service chiefs were present at the meeting as the protracted attacks by terrorists and criminals became central, particularly after rockets were fired into the Maiduguri airport shortly before the president's visit. The Inspector General of Police, Mr. Usman Alkali Baba, is worried about the attack, but believes that the brazen move by the terrorists was largely a failed mission.
They are launching into major towns. They are launched in Maiduguri. It is a concern, and it has been seriously checkmate, and there are efforts to continuously checkmate it. But to a large extent, they have not achieved much of what they have intended to achieve because of the situation that the security agencies, particularly the military, put in place.
Earlier, multiple explosions had rocked the capital from rockets launched by suspected Boko Haram insurgents, destroying many houses around the Maiduguri airport.
To Nigerians.
The Interior Minister, Rauf Aregbesola, also responds to fears about another potential attack in the nation's capital.
There isn't any threat to safety and security of Abuja. Abuja is secure and very, very safe. The council has mandated us to assure Nigerians of their safety, of their security, and enduring peace.
Moments later, the president also receives Governor Abdullahi Ganduje of Kano State, and the subject matter did not deviate from the nation's insecurity. The governor identifies the nation's forest as a key challenge, requesting for additional support for forest within the confines of his state.
We have observed that the security situation now, our forests are the major problems because they accommodate bandits, they accommodate terrorists, they accommodate armed robbers, and they accommodate also herdsmen who are criminals. And I have requested Mr. President to also establish another institution within that forest, and that forest will be liberated completely.
Although the Kano State governor insists there are no terrorists in his state, he believes some politicians are complicit in instigating these terror attacks. And this sort of corroborates what the Minister of Justice revealed in May, identifying some high-profile Nigerians as financiers. Now, the federal government has vowed to continue to uncover these suspects. From the presidential villa, Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And 20 victims and families of those who suffered different violations of their rights by officers of the defunct SARS in the Federal Capital Territory and some states have been awarded the sum of 146 million naira. They include families of the famous Akpo 6 killed in controversial circumstances. The payment was made by the Independent Investigative Panel on Human Rights Violations against SARS and other units of the Nigerian Police Force.
Some of the victims will suffer different violations of their rights by officers of the now defunct Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, and their families can now heave a sigh of relief as the Independent Investigative Panel on Human Rights, set up by the National Human Rights Commission to look into such cases, has compensated some of the petitioners. Since the inception of the panel in 2020, it has received 297 petitions from across 29 states, including the FCT, concluded 144 cases, reached a decision in 75 cases, and approved compensation for 20 victims and their families. In all, 25 of the petitions were struck out, 12 of them withdrawn, and 1 dismissed. According to the Commission, over 150 Nigerians are still looking to submit their petitions for hearing.
The next level is the Attorney General's office that would be prosecuting these policemen and bringing them before the courts of law. And it will interest you to know that some of our petitions, police was already prosecuting them in court. But the fact that they were being prosecuted in court still does not take away the fact of civil remedy.
There must be accountability for human rights violations, and that if there is a violation, there will be a remedy.
The victims are thereafter presented with checks. One of them is Mr. Kingsley Kalu. One of his legs was amputated after he was shot at by a police officer on October the 18th, 2017, a few months after his wedding. He expresses his gratitude to the Commission for the compensation.
I still thank the panel. It's better than nothing. At least for them to have taken a bold step to see that people like me get compensated. I still appreciate them for that.
A total of 146 million naira was disbursed to the 20 victims. The disbursement of monetary compensation might bring some succor to the victims of police brutality. But for many, the horrid testimonies of these ones shared at the panel should inspire far-reaching reforms for an agency of government meant to protect and make safer their existence as Nigerians.
And to health matters now. Over 1 million doses of the AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine have been destroyed by the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, and the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency in Abuja. The vaccine doses were part of the over 2 million received in the country on October the 11th and 29th, 2021.
The truck conveying the expired COVID-19 vaccines arrives at the Goza dumping site located 2 kilometers away from the Idu train station in Abuja. 1,066,214 doses of the vaccines are to be destroyed. They are part of the 2,594,100 doses of AstraZeneca vaccine received by Nigeria on the 11th and 29th of October 2021, out of which 1,527,886 doses were said to have been utilized.
We have successfully withdrawn.
The Executive Secretary of the National Primary Healthcare Development Agency and the Director General of the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, give details on the expired vaccines.
We had developed countries that procured these vaccines and hoarded them in their stores. At the point that they were about to expire, they were offered for donation.
If something happens, we can recall through our track and trace setting, and if it expires, not our fault, NAFDAC will receive it.
Every bit of the expired products is crushed to pieces to ensure they do not get into the wrong hands. Many of these vaccines were donated to Nigeria almost at the time they were about expiring, raising the question of whether developing countries like Nigeria are now being turned into dumping sites for COVID-19 vaccine. With only less than 10 million Nigerians out of the over 200 million population in the country said to have been vaccinated, vaccine hesitancy remains a major challenge in Nigeria. But authorities say they are optimistic about meeting the target of vaccinating 110 million people by the end of 2022. As Nigeria continues to make efforts to get more people vaccinated, one only wonders how long it will take the country to exhaust its current stock of vaccines to avoid wastages such as this one. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
And we end our news round in the UK, where the government is considering whether COVID rules should be tightened in England. According to reports, 3 options are on the table, including another lockdown on 8 p.m. pub curfew.
The EU's drug regulator has approved use of the COVID-19 vaccine from US-based Novavax in people 18 years and older, paving the way for a 5th coronavirus shot in the region as the Omicron coronavirus variant spreads. Data from 2 large studies show the vaccine has an efficacy of around 90%. COVID-19 infections have broken records in parts of Europe in recent weeks, with governments and researchers scrambling to bolster defenses against the fast-spreading Omicron. Austria has introduced stricter travel restrictions at its airports and borders. Non-residents arriving in the country will now have to be vaccinated and show a valid negative PCR test. Austrian passport holders and residents will be allowed in unvaccinated, but will have to go into a 10-day isolation until they're able to show a negative PCR test. Travellers from the United Kingdom entering Germany must have a negative test and isolate for 2 weeks, regardless of whether they've been vaccinated. Officials announced the new rules as it classified the UK as a virus variant area of concern, the highest COVID-19 risk level. German citizens and residents will still be allowed to enter from the UK. Thailand is considering reinstating compulsory isolation for foreign visitors due to concerns over the spread of Omicron. It comes as the health ministry reported the country's first case of local transmission of the coronavirus variant. Elsewhere, acting on health ministry recommendations, Israeli cabinet ministers have voted to put the United States, Italy, Belgium, Germany, Hungary, Morocco, Portugal, Canada, Switzerland and Turkey on the no-fly list.
Yeah, I'm going to fly to Belgium, Antwerp, to my rabbi, and I'm very upset to see the airport here. No people, and the restaurant is closed, everything is closed here. It's not look good. But Israel, it's in a good place. It's not, the corona this morning, it's only 350 people. In all the world, it's 1,000. I think the government make a good job, and I'm very happy.
The move comes amid rising coronavirus infections in Israel. It has so far recorded 134 confirmed cases of Omicron and 307 suspected cases.
And that's our news round for the week. Thank you for watching. I'm Ladi Williams. Bye for now.